We are in the middle, we're getting close to the end now of this series on how we, as the people of God, through Jesus, can bless people. Bless may be another way of saying, how do we love people well? Everybody in the world, everybody who writes music these days is in love with the concept of love and how it's the thing that makes the world go around and how it's really the only thing we need. And it's great to say that, to have this great philosophical ideal of love and that everybody should love each other. But how do we, especially as people who worship the God of love, how do we love others practically speaking, and especially in ways that we're not just known as other nice Canadian people, but how do we love people in a way that points them to Jesus? And so we've got this acronym, BLESS, as a way of remembering how we can love or bless people in practical ways. And so a few weeks ago, we started with B, begin with prayer. We tie in, we communicate with God who defines his character as love. And so that's where it begins, asking God to ignite our hearts for people around us so we can love them well, to open our eyes so we can see the needs around us, to give us words to speak, discernment, when to listen, when to talk. Then, the second week, we talked about the discipline of listening well to other people. That is to give people our attention, to seek, to understand others before we tell them what they need or to do something for them. And last week we talked about the E, which is eating. We eat with people. This is where we love others through the gift of hospitality, which, as we studied last week, saw this is one of the earliest Christian practices, to eat together in one another's homes and coffee shops and to welcome those who are near to us, welcome the family of God, but also welcome those who are strangers, whether that be around our supper tables, our coffee tables, or a spot on our front lawns. And the challenge that we laid out for you last week is to eat 3 of your meals or coffee times. Again, you're probably eating and drinking at least 30 times a week. What if 3 of those times were with other people? I got some feedback from some of you saying, Jason, like having company over 3 times a week, that's a pretty big ask. For some of you, maybe that isn't. Some of you who are social would be like, that's like far too little. My mom would be included in that group. For some of you who are a little quieter, that seems like a gigantic task. But I would suspect that many of you are having coffee. So even if you had 2 coffees with people and then someone over for a tea, or you went out and hung out on the lawn and had a cool drink on your back porch, we don't necessarily always need to think of eating together as this big spread where people come over at 5:30 and you hope they go home at 7:30, but really they stay till 11:30. So when we say eat together, we're not talking about that gigantic hosting Martha Stewart. Wasn't specific about that, but if you're overwhelmed, we can look at ways to do this simply rather than complex, okay? Today, we want to get to the first S, which is serve. And I think that serving is one of the secret sauces of Christianity. It brings life and blessing to other people, and perhaps paradoxically, serving brings life to us. Service is deeply connected to the life and example of Jesus, and this will be no surprise to you. Let's visit again this kind of epitomizing moment in the life of Jesus where he talks about service and demonstrates it through an object lesson. And of course, that's going to happen in John chapter 13. Let me read together with you verses 1 to 5. It was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. So Jesus is going to show his disciples what love is. And watch how it goes down. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. And so he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. So let's set the stage again. We've heard this story before, many of us. Jesus is now in John chapter 13, just hours away from going to the cross. The next morning after this story, he would be carrying it up Skull Hill, Golgotha, to be crucified. And this is really the last peaceful moment he's got to talk about what's on his heart. And he starts out the evening, he's going to preach a whole sermon. It's a whole big talk to his disciples we know as the upper room discourse. But he starts out the sermon by washing his disciples' feet. And this is not a tradition we have now, but you can imagine why people in the Middle East practiced foot washing. If you're walking around all day on dirt roads in sandals in a very hot country, and then you get them together for a meal and cram them into one small hot space, you can imagine what the aroma is like in a room like that. And so, common courtesy was for the host of the meal to provide a servant or a slave to wash the feet of the guests around the table. Usually they had a jug of water, they put your feet over a little basin, they poured water over your feet, and the basin caught the water, and the foot washer does the work and dries your feet with a towel. As you can imagine, it's not a particularly glamorous job, so the foot washing chore or task was reserved for people with little or no status, servants and or slaves. So Jesus and his disciples arrive at the upper room. They're going to celebrate the Last Supper, the Passover meal, and it was a rental. Right? They rented the room out, and it seems that it was kind of a lower-end room because a servant did not come included for the price. And so the disciples get to the room, they look at each other and say, well, I guess no servant, no foot washing machine here. I guess none of that tonight. We're all just equals here. So there's no obvious choice on who's going to do the jug and basin thing. I guess we'll just skip that tonight and deal with Peter's stinky feet. And then, to their amazement, Jesus gets up from the table, takes off his outer garments, puts a towel around his waist, and walks up to Matthew. And he kneels down in front of him and says, okay, Matthew, let's take a look at those feet. Matthew is stunned. So stunned, in fact, that the scriptures say that he is speechless. In fact, nobody in the whole room knows what to say as Jesus gets down on his knees with the towel around his waist. All they can do is watch in silence as Jesus begins to make his way from disciple to disciple, doing a slave's job. What in the world is this about? Well, I think as I look at the text, there are at least two primary points that Jesus is going to get across. We are going to look at just one this morning, and that is explained by Jesus himself more clearly after he's finished the job. So flip over now to verse 12 of the same chapter. When Jesus had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me Teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and Teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. What are we to do with this command to wash one another's feet? I think there are a couple options. Option A is that what Jesus is telling his disciples here is that every time they go out for supper, they should literally wash one another's feet. The second option is that it's not about feet per se. It's about the attitude and posture that Jesus is modeling for his disciples to imitate. So washing one another's feet is a metaphor for what the disciples are to be about, and that is to be humble servants. I think the obvious choice is option B. The point isn't that we should have literal foot washing ceremonies in addition to celebrating communion together, although I have, at different times in my life, washed other people's feet and had my own feet washed, and it's been helpful for me to understand what humility and service is all about. But the point is that Jesus wants us to imitate his service, no matter how great or important or godly we think we are. Here's how he breaks it down. Verse 12. Do you see what's just happened here, gentlemen? You call me teacher. You call me Lord, which is a very powerful title, even one that is used for God himself. You call me Lord. Well, you're right. I am the boss. I am the Lord. I am the teacher. I am the leader. I am, around this table, the one with the most status. And as we saw last week, eating and the arrangements around a table are huge. We're huge in Middle Eastern culture for determining where you fit. And Jesus said, look, I had the seat at the center of the table. Looking back at the event as John is thinking, the writer of this story, as he is thinking about it, he realizes just how much status Jesus had at that meal. Flip back to verse 3, which we read at the beginning. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. God had put all things under Jesus' power. At this precise hour, at this exact moment, John says, Jesus was really Lord of all. He could do whatever he wanted. He held all power over creation. God had turned universal control and authority over to Jesus at that very moment. And so if I had just been given all the power to do whatever I want in all of the universe, I'm not sure that the first act that I would do would be to demonstrate that power and control by adopting the posture of a slave. And Jesus says, this is not just something special I did for one night. I am now setting the standard for you, my people, for the rest of time. You want to be great? Do you want to aspire to be like me, your teacher and Lord? Then do what I do and serve the people around you. There is no job that should be beneath you. There is no person. Remember, John even makes a special point that Judas Iscariot is around the table just before he's about to take off and betray Jesus. He gets his feet washed too. There is no person, Jesus said, that is beneath your dignity to serve. Luke tells us that Jesus put it this way: the kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who is at the table? But I, your teacher, your Lord, am among you as one who serves. This is Jesus' leadership style. This is the way he intends his people to change the world. To serve from the bottom up. It's one key way you can always recognize whether a leader or a church group that claims to follow Jesus, it's one way you can discern, are they really following Jesus or not, by answering this question, observing what is true of them. Do they serve? If we want to cooperate with the risen Jesus as he transforms, and indeed we're talking about blessing the world, if we want to collaborate with Jesus in blessing the world, we cannot resort to the world's typical way of bringing change, and that is to grab authority and then to use it for our own benefit so we can force people to accept Jesus. Look, take it. This is the way it's going to be for you. We can't push or pull or manipulate people to get on their knees. Every time the church has tried to use power to make people follow Jesus, every time we have pressured people into believing that his story is true, we have gone wrong. Just listen to what we are dealing with First Nations people, how the church is at the heart of making that happen. We can go all the way back to the Crusades, which our Middle Eastern friends are still talking about, and we have a huge blemish on our record, and it's a stumbling block for people to come to know Jesus today. History has proved that, and our own experience is proving that too. I hear stories like every second week from people who are turned off of Jesus and his church because someone tried to scare them or guilt them or pressure them or power down onto them so that they would come into the kingdom, and they run. Brian McLaren, in one of his books, talks about this. This is what he says. The revolution, that is what Jesus has brought to the world, this revolution cannot use the corrupt tactics of the current regime. Otherwise, it will only replace one corrupt regime with another. For example, if it uses violence to overcome violence, deceit to overcome deceit, coercion to overcome coercion, fear to overcome fear, then the revolution isn't really revolutionary. It's just a matter of regime change. Yeah, we Christians, we want to get back so we can rule and tell everyone what to do. It's not really a revolution. It's just another thing happening over and over again. So what's our approach to bless the world? We adopt the posture of servanthood. Now, as I get into practicalities here, sometimes I feel like I need to say, come on, church, let's get on the horse here. We got so much to learn. We fall so far short. If I take a look at us as a church community right now, I believe that this service orientation of Jesus is something that defines us as a church. Not that we're perfect, not that we do this all the time, that there isn't room for growth, but I certainly see example after example of you folks serving one another and serving this community in the Jesus way. And so I don't have 15 ways that you can do better to serve people around you, because I think this DNA is already part of your bloodstream. I don't know if that's a very medical way of saying that. But just a few examples in the past little while. Getting involved in the food drive, serving refugees. I was talking with Mike this week, who is giving leadership to the Cochrane Refugee Committee that have brought a couple Syrian families here. And he said, the group has done a really good job at being inclusive of people who have faith background or don't have faith background. But he said, Jason, if you really want to get down to who's involved in welcoming the refugees, there's 1 million Christians that are at the heart of that. That's because I believe that Jesus, his DNA is flowing through us. Talking another story this week about school kids heading to do a trip to Southeast Asia. And there was a comment from one of the parents saying, hey, when you guys go visit organizations in Southeast Asia, it seems that you're visiting a lot of Christian agencies. And the response of the teacher was, yeah, well, if you want to find out who's really helping the country, the Christians seem to be the ones that are doing it. It's because it's who we are. We are adopting Jesus' posture. And so I want to commend you as a church for serving in hidden ways that we're never celebrating on the platform, ways that you're serving your neighbors that no one ever gives you applause for, and just say, keep going, keep doing it, keep up with the Jesus way. Because serving really does bless people and gives Jesus an opportunity to introduce himself to our friends through us as we serve. I read about a fascinating study this week, which I think proves it. In his book, The Missional Entrepreneur, Mark Russell, who's a writer, a PhD, tells the story of a survey or of a study he conducted in 2007 on 2 different styles of missionary groups in the country of Thailand, the city of Chiang Mai. And Russell's main interest was in looking at missionaries who were going to Thailand using the business as mission model. That means that they were entrepreneurs and they were setting up businesses in Thailand as a way of bringing good news to Thai people. And so he began talking with these Christian people who were setting up businesses in Thailand, and he conducted 128 interviews and looked at 12 different business as mission enterprises. And he saw, as he began to talk with all these missionaries, all these people setting up stuff in Thailand, he saw two different approaches to doing missions work in Thailand that these entrepreneurs were using. One group of business people planned to go to Thailand and start a business, and their focus was on simply blessing Thai people. They saw, as he interviewed them, that their main calling was to invest in the people of Chiang Mai, whether that was a coffee shop or a mechanic shop. They were simply using their businesses to bless and help people, which of course included, but not limited to, introducing them to Jesus and inviting them to follow after him. Let's call that approach, those missionaries, the blessers. There was another kind of group of people who also went to Thailand to start business, but they had a slightly different focus. It was really on getting converts through the business. In their mind, setting up the business, whether that was the coffee shop or the mechanic shop, employing people, providing services to Thais was really a sidebar to their mission to convert people. So let's call those folks the converters. So some people were there, look, we're just here, we've got these business skills, we want to employ some people and bless them and introduce them to Jesus along the way. Other people said, look, we kind of need a cover for our reason to be in Thailand. We're mainly there to convert people. When you look at when Russell began to look at the effectiveness rates, which group do you think was more effective in actually introducing people to a personal relationship with Jesus? Here's the stats. The blessers out-converted the converters 48-1. I have a little thing that shows that. There it is, okay. The magic of technology. 48-1. The converters saw 36 conversions for every 24 missionary years invested in Thailand. Sorry, the blessers saw 36 conversions for every 24 missionary years invested in Thailand. The converters saw one conversion for every 32 missionary years invested. Should it surprise us that following Jesus' serving way affects people not just socially and economically, but spiritually as well? And I know that there's some of you who are business people here, many of you who are not, but I think some of the basic principles that these cross-cultural missionaries came to experience are very important for us who simply want to bless people the Jesus way. So here's a couple little things I took in my mind as I looked at this study and listened to what Jesus said on the night of the Last Supper, and have a couple things for us to think about. First of all, serve and live holistically. The people who went to Thailand to serve were asked, why are you doing what you're doing? And the blessers said something along the lines of, I just want to be a blessing. I'm just here to bless whoever comes my way. They saw their purpose for existing as helping people in many aspects of their lives, financial, physical, spiritual, and certainly a key part of why they were there was that they wanted people to know Jesus personally. But this was just one aspect of their larger purpose and vision. The ordinary working, the day-to-day living, doing errands, chores, that part of their lives, and especially the business, were a part of the reason that Jesus had sent them into the community in the first place. The converters, on the other hand, saw their businesses not as a means of improving the social environment around them, but merely as a way to connect with people and then convert them. And Russell found that they often gave statements like this: we don't want to get distracted by the business stuff. We have to keep the main thing the main thing. Here's the rub, I think, for us. Serving people, in fact, this whole blessed lifestyle that we're talking about is meant to be just that, a lifestyle. It's the way you live your whole life following Jesus, not doing like bait and switches. Hey, do you want some noodles? Oh, hey, Jesus instead. Ha ha ha, we fooled you, sucker. Because if we do that approach, people go, did you really want to serve me? Did you really want to get to know me? Or is this a means to some other end? As we live authentically, as we serve holistically, not my Christian life here, and that's a separate little container from my work life here, and that's a separate container from my recreation life, and heaven forbid that my Christianity gets mixed into those other things. All of it together is what the Holy Spirit uses to draw people to Jesus. And so I would say we serve holistically. We don't do good deeds because we've just got to convert people. Secondly, I would say as we serve, we say openly. In other words, we are honest about who we really are and why we are motivated to serve, to live the way we do, to be other-centered as our Lord and Master and Teacher was himself. Back to Thailand. The people who were converters, they had predetermined in their mind that the Thai people would be suspicious about them and why they were in the country. And they felt, you know what? If people really knew why we're here, they're going to think of us in a negative way. So they wanted to protect their missionary identities from the Thai people, and they kind of lived covertly, never really being honest about why they were there in the country. It was always kind of a question they shied away from. They didn't want the people around them to know they were one of those Christian people. And so they were very selective about who they would talk to about their faith because they didn't want to blow their cover. And that gave them far fewer opportunities to be open about spiritual matters with the Thai people they are around. The servers, on the other hand, the blessers, were more optimistic. They thought, we're here for good reasons. We don't have any other reason to think that Thai people won't receive us positively. So they were open with other people about who they were and why they were there. And they talked freely about faith being part of their life. And because they were there to serve people regardless of whether they were going to follow Jesus or not, they didn't feel like they needed to push people into accepting Jesus. And so, surprise, surprise, they just relaxed. They just ran the business in an open way. They talked about their faith in a natural way as opportunities arose. The converters, they tended to, we got to rush people into conversations and decisions, and we got to close the deal. So they didn't give their people who were working for them or people they interacted with, they didn't give the people time to think things through. And that caused a chain reaction. That rushed, singular focus led to the Thai people feeling pressured. And so instead of opening themselves up and getting into deeper relationship, they began to back away from these missionaries. This led to the missionaries feeling discouraged because people weren't responding to why they were there, which meant their confidence dropped, which meant that they shared less and less and less of their lives. And soon they thought, this is going really bad. We need to find the perfect time to talk about our faith. So they began looking for that, which there never is a perfect time, so they never were getting opportunities to share. There's a lesson here. Let's just be ourselves and look for ways to serve people. Be yourself. Don't worry so much about what other people may think of you, whether they're going to receive you or not, how they're going to respond if you serve them in some practical way. They're going to think that I'm some person that's going to try to... We think far too much for the people we're trying to bless. So be yourself. Don't worry about it, and be open. We're not into covert operations here. We can be honest about our convictions and our values. We can be open from the very beginning about what Jesus has done in our lives and that he invites us to live in a certain way that is service-oriented. Blessing people is not a secret mission. If our relationship with Jesus is real, it ought to spill into our everyday living and speaking and just being honest with people. It's not meant to be, a big shocking reveal where we, have a trench coat and then Jesus at this time where we just freak people out. They don't know where that came from. The conversation was going that way. We thought we were friends for this reason, and then all of a sudden it's the reveal and it freaks them out and they never want to be with us again. So no skulking around. Thirdly, expect partners to serve with you and even serve you back. Remember what Jesus said about us. He said, "You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world." I could have lots of time to explain what he meant by that, but simply put, as salt, Jesus was saying that Christians are designed to function as preservative and seasoning in society. That means, just like salt preserves meat and seasons it, we are here to counteract moral decay in our society. We are to bring flavor and to taste this world and make it more pleasing for God. As light, Jesus says, we are meant to serve in the world by bringing illumination. We're not just counteracting evil. We don't just play defense. We're on the offensive as well. We expose things that are dark. We bring goodness to our neighborhoods, our towns, our countries. And with God's help, we bring light to the entire planet. So John Stott sums up the salt and light thing this way. The influence of Christians is to be negative, that is, to check the spread of evil and positive, to promote the spread of truth and goodness. Now, it should come as no surprise to us that there are many, many people, both those who have faith and those who do not, who are our allies in being salt and light, to fight, to stand against evil, and to promote the spread of good. Let me give you an example. Our sister church just up the road, Rock Point Church. Many of you drive by it on the way to work every day. All of you have seen one of their facilities there. Many of their leaders are good friends of ours. In 2007, the leadership at Rock Point Church gave $50,000 to 73 of their small groups on one Sunday. So this is about 2007, 9 years ago. I can add real well. And they gave, on that morning, they gave some groups $250, some $500, and some $1,000. And they said, look, we want to fight against the spread of AIDS, HIV in the world. And they picked about 3 or 4 projects in different places in the world and said, go out and take this as seed money. And don't just do it as Christians, as the separate little Christian thing. Find partners in your neighborhood, in your businesses, in your community who have a passion, who have a heart to do the same thing, and invite them in to bless the world. Guess how much after, I don't know how long it was quite a few months, might have even been not till fall, that they asked the money to come back in. Guess how much they took in by the end? Again, this is not some big church in the United States that you've never heard of before. This is like 3 kilometers away. $50,000 became $550,000. They did it again a few years later to fight human trafficking, and they raised $330,000. They had car shows, they were raising chickens, doing all kinds of things in the community, and what they found was that many, many of their neighbors, people who had no idea, no passion for Jesus per se, but wanted to partner with them in counteracting evil and promoting good in the world. Why is that? It's because all of us, not just Christians, are made in the image of God. God's serving DNA is there in all of us. And there are lots of people in Calgary and Cochrane who want to fight evil and do good among us. So serve with them. Look for partners, rather than saying that we are the only hope, we're the only people who have passion for these things, we've got to do it for ourselves. Open yourselves up to partnerships with other people, whether that be on an individual basis or to partner with organizations. Going back to those guys in Thailand, again, the same thing. The converters thought, no, it's only about us. We have to maintain control and everything, and so they limited their partnerships in Thailand. The blessers said, look, we're here to do good for the Thai people. We don't care if you're in for that, if you're in for doing good, we'll partner with you. And they saw their influence and their capacity expand with time because they were open to partnerships. So expect partners to serve along with you. And just a little sidebar note. Be humble enough to be served as well. Don't be so proud as a Christian to think that service flows only one way, from the Christian to the non-Christians. We are not such great and noble people that we have all our junk together and therefore never need any service or help from anybody else. Look at Jesus' life and you will find many, many times that he allowed people to serve him. And I think sometimes that we are so passionate about being the ones who serve when it comes our time to graciously receive the love and the service that other people want to give us, and again, to open the relationship further, but we can't do that. We can't go there. I can't tell you how many of you, even I've talked, that you've been giving your life to serving Jesus, blessing other people, making meals, but then it comes time for you're hurting, you need help. I don't think I can receive this. There's only one word to describe what's really going on, if I can be judgmental this morning: PRIDE. We're just too proud. We can serve, but no one can serve me. That's not the Jesus way. So yes, serve, but be people who are willing to be served as well. Okay, I don't have any nice, clean way to conclude our time, but I just would invite us, as creative blessers, as people I know, and I see it every week, you have incredible capacity to serve. Go out and experiment. We've been talking about this BLESS acronym, so here's how it could work in flow. We are beginning in prayer, asking God to give us direction, to open our eyes to the people and needs around us. Who have you placed in my life? We are listening to them, genuinely seeking to be attentive to the people and needs around us. We are eating together. It naturally flows that as we are living that out, there are opportunities to serve that we naturally lean into. And what if, as we are eating meals and hanging out with people and listening, that each week we say, I'm asking you, Holy Spirit, to give me 2 to 3 ways that I can practically serve someone else, whether that be writing a note, giving a meal, helping someone move, working on their yard, whatever it may be. And as we're praying, as we're listening, as we're eating and having coffees, let's serve those around us. It's a privilege this morning not only to teach this, but also baptize some folks who are ready to live into this kind of lifestyle, who have already come to know Jesus. And so we're going to do a bit of a transition here. I'm going to pray, and we're going to hear some stories of how God has been blessing the lives of people in our church family. So, would you pray with me? Jesus, we thank you for your humble, serving way. We've known about this way for a long, long time, and yet it still seems sometimes counterintuitive to us that we strive for power, we strive to be first. Would you continue to embed your DNA in our habits from week to week? Would we be the kind of people who are never too proud, never too busy, never too unaware that we can't take off our outer garments, so to speak, and put a towel around our waist and wash the feet of those around us? I want to thank you. I think there's evidence in our church family that you are indeed working in us and through us. And I see a passion to serve throughout our church family. I pray that you would fan those flames even higher, and that the capacity we have as a church family to bless would just grow and grow. Give us eyes to see. Take away the selfish things that we pursue so that we can be more selfless. And may it truly be that as we give our lives away on behalf of others, that we indeed find that we have more life ourselves. We pray these things in the name of the serving one, Jesus Christ. Amen.